You are listening to Mining Stock Education.
The biggest difference will be that the first phase we drilled was predominantly underneath a cover. It was in lower grade parts of the system. And the next phase we're going to drill is either robust outcrops with incredible grades or areas where there's not only that, there's previous drill holes, and we'll be expanding a discovery, which will also help us technically unlock the bigger part of where we drilled so far, unlock the system.
Thank you for tuning in to Mining Stock Education. I'm your host, Bill Powers. In today's show, you're going to get an update from our sponsor, Coppernico Metals, and its chair and CEO, Ivan Bebek. Ivan, welcome back onto the show. We last chatted about 2 months ago, or a little more than that, at PDAC. You had high hopes, hoping to hit what you called joy in those final holes of your first 20-hole program at the Sombrero project in Peru. The results came back. The market so far hasn't responded positively in a share price term. Maybe give us your commentary of what you see happening in the share price and also the geological results thus far.
Sure, thank you. And it's been a big gap since I've been on any airwaves talking about this project. And these big swings that we're going for, they take time, and you will miss big before you hit big. And we didn't entirely miss at all. We started to hit the big system that we were looking to find. We hit a lot more of what's being described as smoke versus fire, but we've learned a ton from this initial phase. And to put things in context for everyone, the areas that we drilled and focused on was predominantly blind drilling. No outcrop. It was definitely not the best parts of the system. It was not the areas of why we waited 10 years and spent $30 or $40 million to get through communities to get access. It did teach us a lot. We had hopes we would hit in certain areas, but what happened with the data was it kept pushing us outside of our polygons where we were permitted to drill. Now, those polygons were drawn back in 2018, about 7 years ago, and we'd gathered more data since, but not wanting to disrupt the permitting process, we felt there was a very good shot to go and drill these first areas. And we saw a lot of really promising results. We feel we're vectoring towards some of the sweeter parts of the system, and a lot more is being discovered in and around the areas that we drilled. We're trenching areas, or we're currently sampling areas that are by far the most robust part of the entire system, even better than the past drill holes that we've seen. We can see incredible outcrop and outcrop in sulfides versus just oxides. What that means is there's potentially a lot more localization, or there wouldn't be any enrichment in those samples that we're seeing. We're also finding other areas. We've talked briefly about Tipiconcha. It's a multi-kilometer massive pyriting outcrop. We have some trench results coming next week from there. And we're starting to see the scale that we dreamed about from the beginning in and around our polygon, specifically just outside it in some areas, and areas that are a few kilometers away from it. We have 10 major targets on this property. We've drilled about 15% of the first target of what's there to go and test. And we paused drilling because it was our initial phase, which was to be exploratory, drill for knowledge. We had hoped to hit the joy, but we didn't miss. Like, it's not dead. It's pushing us just a bit further to the north or a bit further to the south. So we are extremely encouraged by what we've seen today. Nothing has been taken away from this project. And what's going to change in the next 6 months is you're going to see 2 or 3 other areas with incredible mineralization we're finally getting access to, or we've been able to go and sample, that are going to really fill the pipeline of world-class exploration targets on this project. One of the most impressive parts of a skarn, and one of the biggest challenges in the copper exploration business, is grade. And so we hit lower grade, some 0.5%, some 0.2, but skarns can be notably extremely rich in grade. And I think a lot of results will come out between now and the fall. They're going to really, really showcase why Sombrero is so special, why Teck bought 9.9% of it last year, why we are so enthused about the next steps. I hate being quiet. I hate being patient when it comes to major exploration, but I obviously see what's coming down the pipeline, and there's some tremendous targets. And the second phase of drilling, which will start sometime later this year, going into the first quarter of next year, it's going to have a lot of different style targets with a lot more potential probability based on a lot more surface work, or the historical 8 drill holes that exist at our Furasso target, where the type of mineralization we are looking for has already been drilled in several holes, and that'll be an expansion discovery story. So this is barely the first chapter of Sombrero. In the last few weeks, we've had other corporates show up. I guess news travels fast. When you start to see good outcrops, there's more interest in the area, and things have gotten really, really exciting for us.
What has Teck said? Any feedback from Teck directly that you've gotten thus far?
You know what? The tech, a few mining analysts who are intimate that have been to the project, our board member, Keena Jennings, who is the former head of exploration, all of them have the same confidence they had on day one. And everyone clearly sees the very, very robust areas to go and explore. There's new information coming that tech hasn't seen yet, and neither has the market, and we haven't got the samples back from yet. But there are some incredibly robust areas that are going to really drive the excitement going into the next phase of drilling. But so far, project is as advertised. Skarns are complex. We knew that going into this. A lot of people won't explore skarns for that reason. I have no problem missing big as long as they have the chance to hit big. And I think the next phase of this project is going to really, really see better odds towards that, because of where we're going to drill and some of the things I'm alluding to that are going to come out here in the next few months as we get ready for the next phase. The permit that I've explained is limiting us. We are filing a second permit here that would allow us to drill 200 holes. So a lot more areas and test a lot more of these areas I'm referring to. And that permit is underway. We're making great advancements there. We're going to lobby for that to happen in the shorter term. And we can't control permitting timelines, but our team is well versed with permitting in Peru. We've been through that quite a few times, and we're working through additional community agreements in other parts of our property that have extremely robust targets. So in this market, which is really flat for copper equities, unless you have an advanced asset, it's a little bit different. But you have a direction that the market's headed towards, which is a very robust market in copper equities. Our timing of our next round of permits and our ability to drill next is extremely, extremely well aligned with the outlook on the copper prices. Tariffs, all of the things happening with the US economy, with Trump, with the global trade wars that we're seeing is massively a pause on speculative companies, not just copper, but gold, silver, all the junior speculative companies. However, we're seeing an influx of capital and interest come into the space. In the copper world, we actually do have a copper quality deficit issue that's not going to be met in a timely manner. And as the economy gets back on track, as we see some rate cuts and go towards get beyond these tariffs, I think you're going to see the copper market take off. And that's when we plan to be drilling our best targets.
Ivan, the situation you can't control, obviously the macro situation, which you're referencing, you also can't control when you get the permits. You can only control when you apply for them. With those two factors that you can't control and you don't have a revenue generating company, would you consider shifting your executive philosophy where you've always wanted to own 100% of even these huge projects like Sombrero because you take big risks for big rewards? Would you consider a JV if the bigger situation and factors that you can't control don't go your way?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our working capital takes us into June of next year quite comfortably, and so we're not in the state where we're worried about anything. I think the news flow that I'm anticipating over the summer into the fall is going to drive this story back to the top of everyone's quote screen because of the robust nature and the scale of these targets. We're talking 1 to 2 kilometers long targets with, incredible outcrop that we're finally getting to sample on the project. So scale's going to win, grade's going to win. I think that's exceptionally financeable, especially once that news makes it out to the marketplace. And from that perspective, I don't think there's any reason yet to consider a JV. Sombrero represents an opportunity to have multiple pits, not one big monster pit, but multiple pits that would form a district, much like Las Bambas, and form a world-class multiple mines that exist in one area that would be operated through one facility. That is a very financeable style system. It allows you to have a small footprint with a big reward over time versus a massive earth moving event and a massive crater that would be very tough to permit. So it actually works in favor of financeability once the discoveries are made based on where the targets are, relatively near proximity, and the scale of each target being big enough, but not enough to kind of tip the scales and make it a very offensive hole in the ground. As far as other joint venture partners, there's majors that we're talking to beyond tech. We listen as they expressing a lot of interest lately. There's more news to come out of the project that is going to fuel that interest. We have a lot of optionality, but I'm at the mindset of the market is extremely opportunistic for junior mining equities. There are a lot of companies that are well into the red, below zero in their treasuries, and there's some phenomenal assets in different jurisdictions. And we do have a really good liking of the US for this matter. We see Trump in power. We see a big push towards mining in the US, the drill baby drill. And if we could pick up while we wait for permits versus just sitting there and burning our treasury, if we could pick up an asset of consequence to go with Sombrero, mitigate the risks of the timelines and the permitting, that would be a tremendous compliment to our shareholders and the possible equity performance if it was in one of the good jurisdictions in the States. So we don't stop. As quiet as we've been on the airwaves, we've been extremely, extremely busy with project reviews, strategies, and revealing, which you'll see soon, or identifying this new major pipeline of targets within Sombrero. A lot of the targets I'm referencing to are within the current community access agreement we have, and they're going to make the current permit will include them that we're applying for. So there's a lot of things to look forward to within Sombrero. We may take on another asset in a distressed junior, a company that can't get through, and see if we can expand our footprint to have the portfolio approach where we have multiple assets delivering value for shareholders going forward. I'm a contrarian by nature, and as tough as it is to see the share price where it is now, and I think it's massively disconnected from the actual fundamentals of not just what we've drilled, but of what we might drill next and what's coming down the pipeline. I'm also very patient, and being a strategist, this is the time where you can make some very big moves with the company. You can capitalize on the pipeline of success and go into the fall with some of the best targets out there. And the biggest difference will be that the first phase we drilled was predominantly underneath a cover. It was in lower grade parts of the system. And the next phase we're going to drill is either robust outcrops with incredible grades, or areas where there's not only that, there's previous drill holes, and we'll be expanding a discovery, which will also help us technically unlock the bigger part of where we drilled so far, unlock the system. Exploration is tricky as is, but when you have a layer of 5 or 40 meters of volcanic ash that turns into dirt on top of these targets, it makes it even trickier. The excitement out of the technical team, though, is incredible, and it's a driving factor. So this is my first interview back for some time, and I'm going to be on the road a lot for the rest of the year because I'm going to have the news flow to go talk about and to show people and quantify a lot of the statements I'm making here. As the CEO and the chair of the company and a founding director, I think I'm the third or fourth highest paid person in the company. And I do that because I'm a shareholder first. I've put in more money in the last few years into the company that I've taken out. And I've also bought the most shares amongst my management team. I do this because my performance is solely based on the equity return of our share price performance. So when I look at things as a CEO and a chairman, it's how can I monetize what we're doing? How can I enhance that premium onto things that we're going after? And the good news is the heavier part of the lifting has been done. We spent the decade with communities. It's unlocking more communities. It's giving us more access. We spent the time going through the mine ministers, lobbying through permits, being great citizens with both the communities and with the government. So we've really set the stage on what I still believe is one of the world's best copper exploration opportunities for a high-grade major discovery.
Ivan, why didn't you start with where you see the copper outcroppings and some historical results versus going after a target undercover? I can hear people saying that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, why did you start on your best targets first? Because when we drew the polygon 7 years ago and we were exploring, we had a thesis and we assumed in our own right that we'd be able to get through more permits, through more social access earlier than we did, but we didn't want to delay the start of drilling. And every target, every hole that we drilled had a lot of merit behind drilling it. So it was part of the plan. Because we didn't have the access to drill these areas yet, we had a choice. We could have raised the money and waited until we got access. So that would have been a very tough as a shareholder to wait for a period of time after raising the capital. But secondly, the targets we drilled, although they were somewhat blind, they are phenomenal targets and they've vectored us. They would have to be drilled anyway. We would have drilled those with knowledge and not having knowledge. So it was more about a permitting and logistics timeline that's now improving for us. When we financed last summer, copper was $5 a pound in spot, and it dropped down to $3.90 in November. And then we had a rough first quarter with the tariffs, which made it a very volatile sector to be in. So the timing of good results is actually better tomorrow than it was yesterday. And that's coincidental, not planned by us. I wish we had the first big holes of joy, but we have barely scratched the surface on the scale of these targets. And the ones that you're referencing, and if people are wondering, why didn't you drill first? They're going to be drilled next. And everything needs to be drilled. And the time here to explore and find world-class discoveries is going to go on for multiple years. The scale of these systems are big. They are complex, but we're starting to see areas that are much more obvious than areas we've worked in today. So I would say take the mindset on. A lot of knowledge was gained. It's going to expedite our success. Should the exploration be successful, it will definitely expedite that timeline. And it's going to be sometime in the last quarter of this year, going into the first quarter of next year, that we'll see things really come to fruition here, and we can go and expand or drill new potential major discoveries.
So the next results or catalysts investors should look for are the surface results at these new targets that would be upcoming, as well as the permit news?
Yeah, you're going to see further channel sampling. I would say it looks very encouraging, so I'd expect something more interesting on the grade side. But when you look at these targets and you hear about them, just pay attention to the scale. And as you release them, we'll put some context of how big these things could be. We've learned a lot about new targets that we didn't know much about before. We've had numerous visits from our technical team has been on the project quite a bit. And again, you don't know where the best target is until you've drilled it, right? And so we took our best shot initially. It gave us a lot of very, very valuable knowledge that's being applied as we speak, not just to the area we drilled, but to other areas that have very prospective surface exposure. But yeah, it's going to be extremely exciting as we move here forward in the near term, and just look forward to the press releases as these targets really come to fruition.
Okay, the company again is Coppernico Metals, longtime MSE sponsor. To learn more, you can go to the website at coppernicometals.com. Ivan, thanks for coming on the show and providing this update.
My pleasure, and looking forward to talking to you about our next results. Thank you very much.